Mop to mat, gym cleaner forced into the ring, then knocked out the MMA. The fluorescent lights hummed above the nearly empty gym, casting long shadows across the mats where earlier that day professional fighters had trained, sweated, and sparred. The smell of disinfectant lingered, battling the pungent odor of sweat and leather. It was past midnight, and the only sound besides the hum of the lights was the swish of a mop gliding across the mat. That mop was in the hands of a man nobody noticed during the day, Rizwan Malik, the night cleaner. To most people, he was invisible, quiet, polite, and always ready to nod and smile when asked to tidy up or fetch something. But while the fighters sparred and boasted of their victories, Rizwan worked in silence. What they didn't know, what he'd carefully hidden, was that Rizwan had once been a fighter himself. The forgotten fighter. Years ago, back in Karachi, Rizwan had trained under a retired boxer in a neighborhood gym with cracked concrete floors and rusted weights. Fighting wasn't a hobby for him. It was survival. His father had passed away early, and Rizwan carried the burden of providing for his mother and younger siblings. By 16, his fists had become his livelihood. Street bouts, underground rings, sometimes bare-knuckle fights that left him bruised but fed his family. He had talent, yes, but no connections. And in a world where promoters chose money over merit, Rizwan remained a nameless fighter. One brutal injury to his shoulder had sealed his fate. He hung up his gloves, migrated abroad, and ended up as a cleaner in an MMA gym in London. Nobody there knew his past. To them, he was just the janitor. The mockery. The fighters often mocked him. "Hey, mop boy, don't miss that corner. We don't want to slip. You ever lift anything heavier than that bucket? You look like you'd break if you tried a push-up." Rizwan laughed it off, replying only with his usual calm, "Yes, sir." He needed the job, and he couldn't afford to risk it by lashing out. But behind his dark eyes, there was a simmering fire. Every night after the fighters left, he would wrap his hands with rags, stand before the heavy bag, and unleash combinations so sharp and precise they would have stunned anyone watching. Left jab, right cross, slip, uppercut. The rhythm was still there, buried under years of silence. The challenge. One Friday night, the gym was crowded. A famous local MMA fighter named Dylan "The Anvil" Brooks had come to spar. Dylan was a mountain of muscle, undefeated, and known for his arrogance as much as his fighting skills. Cameras followed him as he mocked opponents, flexed for the fans, and promised to crush anyone dumb enough to step in the cage. After his session, Dylan lounged on the mat, laughing with his entourage. That was when Rizwan entered, mop in hand. "Careful, mop boy," Dylan sneered, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Don't get your bucket in the way, unless you want to try cleaning me up after I knock you out." The room roared with laughter. Rizwan gave a small smile and shook his head, focusing on his work. But Dylan wasn't done. "Come on, lads. Imagine this guy in the cage. He'd faint before the bell rings. Hey, mop boy, ever even thrown a punch in your life?" For a moment, Rizwan paused. He could ignore it like always. But something in Dylan's tone, the cruelty and the laughter, awakened an old spark. He raised his head. "I've thrown a few," Rizwan said quietly. The gym fell silent for a beat, then erupted in louder laughter. "You hear that?" Dylan bellowed. "The janitor thinks he's a fighter." Someone shouted, "Let him prove it." Another added, "Put him in the cage." Dylan's grin widened. "Yeah, let's see if Mop Boy has more than a mop in those hands. One round, no excuses. Come on, janitor, prove yourself." Rizwan's boss, the gym manager, tried to intervene. "This is ridiculous, Dylan. He's staff, not a fighter." But the crowd was all right. Mop to mat. The Rise of Rizwan. Shadows of the Past. Part 2. The arena still buzzed in Rizwan's ears long after his debut fight ended. The roar of the crowd chanting his name had been unlike anything he'd ever experienced. He'd won, decisively, with the same quiet precision that had floored Dylan "The Anvil" Brooks weeks earlier. But when the cameras dimmed and the reporters left, Rizwan returned to his small rented room above a grocery shop. The walls were thin, the bed creaked, and the heater often sputtered out in the London cold. He sat on the edge of the mattress, unwrapping his bruised hands. The cheers still echoed, but so did something else. The memory of Karachi, of his mother's tired face, of his younger brother's voice over a crackling phone line. "Pi, are you eating enough? Don't forget about us." Rizwan closed his eyes. Fame wasn't the prize he sought. His real fight was still for them. The training grind fame, however, had its price. Reporters followed him to work. Fans showed up at the gym. Promoters dangled contracts with dollar signs big enough to make any man dizzy. But Rizwan stayed cautious. He signed only with a local promoter named Amir Shah, a former fighter who understood his reluctance. Amir wasn't flashy, but he was loyal, and Rizwan valued that above all. "Listen," Amir told him one evening after training, "you've got raw skill, but MMA isn't just boxing. You'll need to sharpen your ground game, grappling, jiu-jitsu, wrestling. Otherwise, these wolves will eat you alive." So Rizwan humbled himself again. At 32, older than most up-and-comers, he rolled on mats with kids half his age, letting them choke him, pin him, teach him. He drilled takedown defenses until his body screamed. He studied film late into the night, scribbling notes like a student before exams. And every evening, when the gym emptied, he still mopped the floors. Not because he had to, but because it reminded him of where he started. The ghost of Dylan. Meanwhile, Dylan Brooks had vanished from the spotlight. After the viral knockout, he'd gone dark on social media. Rumors swirled. Some said he was training abroad, others that he'd spiraled into drinking. But those who knew him understood one thing. Dylan's ego couldn't survive humiliation, and he would be back. One night, as Rizwan left the gym, a group of fans approached him for photos. Behind them, leaning against a black SUV, stood Dylan. His jaw clenched, a scar still faintly visible from the knockout punch. "Our story isn't finished, janitor," Dylan muttered as Rizwan walked past. "Enjoy the fame while it lasts. Next time you won't walk out of the cage." Rizwan didn't respond. He simply nodded, his silence sharper than any insult. The family's eyes. Rizwan's victories brought money at last. He sent most of it home. His mother's voice trembled with pride on the phone. "Beta, the neighbors are saying you're on television. Can you imagine? My son, the fighter." His brother, Adil, begged to visit London. "Let me see one of your fights in person, Bhai. Please." Rizwan smiled but cautioned him. "Soon, but stay focused on your studies. I fight so you won't have to." Every punch he threw carried their weight. Every bruise he bore felt lighter knowing his family slept with full stomachs. The rising storm. Within a year, Rizwan's record was 5-0. He wasn't flashy. He didn't taunt or dance or shout into cameras. But he was efficient, clinical, and unshakably calm. Fans began calling him the Silent Storm. Still, critics questioned whether he could handle top-tier fighters. And in the shadows, Dylan plotted his return. Then came the announcement. Main event, Rizwan Malik versus Dylan, the Anvil Brooks. Rematch. The world erupted. Some called it redemption for Dylan. Others, a test for Rizwan. For both men, it was more than a fight. For Rizwan, it was a chance to prove his first victory wasn't luck. For Dylan, it was vengeance. Mop to mat, The Silent Storm Goes Global, Part 3. The London night was cold, but Rizwan Malik's heart was warm as he walked out of the arena after his second victory over Dylan Brooks. The headlines were everywhere. Silent Storm strikes again. From mop to mat, Rizwan now a contender. For the first time in years, Rizwan allowed himself a small dream. Maybe, just maybe, the belt wasn't impossible. A call from home. Later that night, as he unwrapped his bruised hands, his phone buzzed with a video call. His younger brother Adil's smiling face filled the screen. "Pi, the whole neighborhood was watching. Even the shopkeepers closed early. Mama cried the entire fight." Rizwan chuckled. "I hope not because she was scared." "No," Adil shook his head. "Because she was proud. You're not just our brother now. You're Pakistan's brother. Everyone says so." The words humbled Rizwan. He had never wanted fame, but if his story could inspire even one child back home to fight for something better, then maybe it was worth it. New horizons. Amir Shah, his manager, was ecstatic. "You're a hot property now, Rizwan. I've got offers from the States, from Brazil, even from Dubai. Big promotions, big money, you're on the path to a title shot." But Amir's tone darkened. There's also pressure. Sponsors want you to trash talk. Promoters want drama. They think silence doesn't sell. Rizwan shook his head. My fists do the talking. That's what I tell them, Amir sighed. But this business isn't always about skill. It's politics, greed. You'll need to be careful. Crossing the ocean. Rizwan's first international fight was set in Las Vegas, the mecca of combat sports. The arena lights were brighter, the crowds louder, the stakes higher. His opponent was a Brazilian jiu-jitsu master named Carlos Silva, undefeated in grappling tournaments. Analysts predicted Rizwan wouldn't last 2 rounds on the ground, but they didn't know how much time Rizwan had spent rolling with wiry teenagers in London gyms, humbling himself day after day. The fight began with Silva immediately shooting for takedowns. Rizwan sprawled, defended, scrambled. By the 3rd round, Silva was exhausted, his submissions failing. Rizwan unleashed a barrage of punches, forcing the referee to stop it. The world gasped. Rizwan Malik, the janitor-turned-fighter, had beaten a global star. Shadows in the system. After the fight, Amir warned him again. There's talk, Rizwan. Promoters whispering about fixing matches, about certain fighters being protected. You're not in the small leagues anymore. If you keep winning, you'll step on powerful toes. Rizwan's brow furrowed. Then I'll fight harder. But the storm was brewing. The Karachi connection. One morning, Rizwan scrolled through his messages. Among the congratulations, one name stopped him cold. Arif Khan. The name dragged him back to Karachi, to the underground rings of his youth. Arif had been his fiercest rival, ruthless, cunning, always willing to cheat to win. He was the one who'd injured Rizwan's shoulder years ago, ending his career in Pakistan. Now, Arif's message read, I hear you're famous now, janitor. Don't forget, you ran from me once. You won't run again. Amir confirmed it a week later. Arif signed with a promotion in Dubai. They want to market it as unfinished business. They're offering us the fight. Rizwan's hands clenched. Facing Arif wasn't about money or fame. It was about closing a wound that had never healed. I'll take it, he said quietly. The Dubai spectacle. The fight in Dubai was unlike anything Rizwan had seen. Billboards with his face lined the highways. Reporters swarmed him at the airport. But the real show was Arif. Arif strutted in golden robes, cameras flashing, his mouth pouring venom. This man is a fraud. He left Karachi beaten and broken. I'll remind the world who the real king is. The crowd lapped it up. The promoter,